Hello and welcome to the Australian's Money Puzzle podcast. I'm James Kirby, the wealth editor at The Australian. Welcome aboard, everybody. Well, you've probably seen this week that the brains trust, if you like, inside the property industry have suggested that property prices are going to fall 1 to 3% perhaps next year. In Sydney, they're saying it will fall by 4%. Which, well, first of all, will it ever happen? I wonder. They've got it wrong a lot of time in the past. They've got these forecasts wrong, but people take them seriously, of course, when they come out. If they are right, might give you a second chance to renovate or get involved as a property investor renovator. And if you do that, I have someone today who could give us some very useful tips about that. My guest has been on the show before. It's Kitty Parker of Kitty and Miles. How are you, Kitty?
I'm really good, James. Thanks for having me this morning.
Okay, very good. Now, first things first, what do you think of these forecasts that we might see 3-4% drop next year?
I think 3% is quite negligible, I think, in the property market when you think of 3%, unless we're talking about higher priced properties in which that is still substantial. But I think for the everyday Aussie and the everyday listener, 3% will not really make that much difference with regard to their ability to get into the market as a first home buyer. I don't think it's much to write home about per se.
Yes, I see where you're coming from. I suppose they think about it, I suppose the news as such in the forecast is that it's a negative forecast rather than a positive forecast. But we know already that the market did much better this year than last year. We do know the historical record of these guys at the moment is very poor. So we will simply put it on the table and say that's what they're saying. You're up in Sydney, of course, and that market actually took off, didn't it? It's been the hottest market in the country so far. Is it still? What's your sense of it now?
That is correct. There were a number of senior economists predicting that this year was not going to be a surging market in any capacity, and it's definitely been quite, by economist terms, counterintuitive. If I may politely say, I predicted this late last year. Anyone that was in receipt of my monthly newsletters, I forecast this about October last year, due to there were a number of fundamental drivers in place that were likely to bring about the surge that we've experienced. So as to whether it is still occurring at the moment, it very much depends on the sector of the market. I am finding the entry level end, we'll say for most, Aussie first home buyers, that area of the market, there's not a lot of stock available. Right. So the buyers that are out there looking to purchase, they're really vying for a smaller than typical number of properties. So that's holding prices rather buoyant. Conversely, in the more luxury end, we'll call it, 4 mil, 5 mil plus end of the market, that's the end of the market that really has taken quite a hit in the last couple of months. Okay. And I would predict that's less due to interest rate rises and more the economy, the stock market. I actually think that end of the market maneuvers a little bit more in line with the stock market. So it's a little bit of a diverse play going on at the moment, depending on your budget level and what you're looking to do.
All right. So when you dismissed all those negative forecasts, and you were correct, the basis on which you dismissed them, are those factors still in play? I am assuming you said immigration was one.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And the top end of the market, China buyers. Have you seen a return of China buyers in the market this year?
Yes, definitely. I would say from about July onwards, in this financial year, we definitely saw a bit of an influx from overseas buyers, and this has been both those residing overseas at the moment, but also new migrants.
Right.
So I can definitely say that the increasing levels of migration have had an impact on the market, because a number of the folks that have come in, while you may go, oh, surely they rent before they buy, the rental market is really tight as well, especially in Sydney. So
Yeah.
a lot of folks are being pushed inadvertently into the buying market because rentals, the weekly rental levels are through the roof, and there's not enough rentals to go around. So
Wow.
it's very much corralling folks.
Are you saying like they're literally coming out of hotels and buying their first property from that point? Wow. Yeah. Because the rental market is actually tougher. Is that it? Because there's less to rent than there is to buy.
Yeah. And if you think of the cost to rent, especially in Sydney at the moment, it's relatively on par with paying a mortgage. Right. So most folks now, gone are the days where, you could rent a property, say, for $500 a week, and the equivalent in a mortgage was, say, $850. Everything now is a lot more on par. So folks are thinking, why would I bother renting when it's the same, cost in a mortgage? I may as well pay a mortgage and at least own the property and, create some wealth for myself along the way.
And the distinct possibility that maybe we're at the peak of rates, and they may, next year, again, the same people who are saying that house prices will drop are saying that rates will drop. In fact, obviously the two things are linked. So that's been going on at the moment. Have you ever seen a situation, can you ever remember a time where people were more likely to buy than rent if they could in any fashion because of rentals, not because of anything else?
I actually can't recall. I don't recall a time where rentals grew so substantially. I mean, we're talking about 30% growth within 12 months. Like it's really phenomenal. Yeah. And I don't recall another time where property management teams were able to go in and very much lift people's rents. I don't want to say willy-nilly, but it does feel a little bit willy-nilly. So we're going up from say $900 a week in rent. A lot of folks are moving straight up to $1,300. And that to me is really unprecedented. But there is such demand in the rental market that rents can be increased as much as a property manager feels they can, and there will still be folks looking to rent. So that's where the problem really rests, that there's no regulation, there's no legislation in place at the moment to cap those rental lifts. So it's very much driven by the market and not by ethical conduct, I would say.
Well, the Greens would like us to have a freeze. I didn't imagine a buyer's advocate in Sydney would back them, but where do you come on that one?
I don't think necessarily a freeze. Like, I wouldn't call it, the socialist side in me coming out in that regard. But I do think there should be some regulations in place to give some form of reprieve to tenants, even if it's 10% a year or 15% a year. I don't mind rental lifts occurring, but I think in any stretch of the imagination, someone moving from $900 a week rent to $1,300 or $1,400 in one hike, I think that is quite substantial.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I suppose, well, that's the thing. It's a property market. Okay, we're going to take a break. That's plenty for our listeners to consider in part one. We'll be back in a moment where we're going to talk about Kitty's renovation ideas. This is for the property investor. She's been working on this. Back in a moment. Kitty and Miles, buyer's agents in Sydney. Now, you have been doing something about not just, first of all, we say bravo to anyone who's renovating right now. It's never easy. It's always demanding. It's physically tough. It's toil. It is a stress. But more than that, just at the moment, there is this shortage of particular trades, which means it's harder than ever. But you had some ideas for less than $1,000, I believe. What on earth could you get for less than $1,000? A door handle?
You know what? Don't mock it, James. You'd be surprised how an aesthetically pleasing home, honestly, is what can create home buyer frenzy and FOMO in buyers.
Yeah.
And you don't need to spend an arm and a leg to make your home either aesthetically pleasing for yourself, as in just a mini makeover, or to enhance the aesthetics when you're selling your home.
Right.
It doesn't have to be time consuming, and it doesn't have to hit the hip pocket. There are some quick tips and tricks. And I know you're going to say, Kitty, what are they? Number one, absolutely number one, I would always say, make sure, as I know you joked, door handles. In the kitchen of any property, it tends to be one of the most expensive rooms to renovate in line with a bathroom.
Yeah.
So if you update cupboard door handles, taps, a shower head, things like that, you can honestly go to Bunnings. You can buy all of that for a couple of $100.
Yes.
Change these up yourself. And you would be surprised how you really bring a modern feel to these rooms just with changing the fixtures and fittings. Really simple stuff.
Okay, right. Anything else? $1,000 worth of plants?
Lighting is another
Lighting,
one,
yeah, I would expect so.
Lighting fixtures. We forget that a lot of the light covers that we may have in our homes, are there from the 80s or whatnot. And a simple change in the fittings of a light, whether it's a light shade or whether it's paying a couple of $100 for an electrician to come in and take out the current lighting, and whether installing track lighting or down lighting, things like that.
Yeah.
Down lights are incredibly popular at the moment.
Right.
They create a real ambient feel. Dirt cheap.
Okay.
So they're good. You can really make over rooms, and you don't need to spend $10,000-$20,000 or more.
All right. I didn't say door handles at random, by the way. I can remember distinctly doing it. I can remember distinctly going and replacing them. So, all right, very good, very good. They're really good recommendations. Remember that, folks. Yes, it's interesting. And of course, when you take someone in and you ask them, what should we do? They are in business invariably and they have ideas for what you can do. But think about it yourself, perhaps. And what Kitty is saying there, I think it's very practical guidance. And my gosh, if you can leverage $1,000 worth of work into whatever, 10, 20, 30 more on your home, that's a very, very good return on a property that you might have. Okay, we're going to go to questions. We'll be back in a moment. A couple of questions, Kitty. I'm just wondering what would be the ones that you would find actually most interesting or have something to add to. The first is from Omar. He's making the point that the share of outstanding mortgages in Australia, it's all variable rates. And so he's saying that the mortgage holders get it in the neck, basically, that it's because the variable mortgage holder, we have so many of them, when they move rates up, they get hit much faster than, say, the US, where people have much, much longer terms. And he is suggesting, actually, that the mortgage holders should be assisted. It's interesting. I mean, you said in the start of the show, maybe the renters should be assisted. He's saying maybe the mortgage holders should be assisted. I wonder, is this just a broad reflection of an extraordinarily tight market of 1% vacancy rates? And you mentioned about the factors that you thought would keep this market buoyant. And you said to me just a few minutes ago, you don't see any change in that. I'm with you. I don't see any change. I mean, we've got a shortage of property. We've got immigration at 400,000 in a 12-month period. There is high interest rates. It's a kind of perfect storm in some ways, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I agree. We've also got protracted the process of getting DA approvals and construction approvals and all of that. has become incredibly protracted. So new builds and things like that, new developments are taking a lot longer and are more costly as well. So as you say, there are just a number of factors there that really give light to property prices not curbing anytime soon. And I know we all want them to correct. And we understand that as interest rates rise, it's squeezing mortgage holders, especially those on variable rates, obviously. It's squeezing them more so. But if we don't deal with the fundamental drivers of price, then interest rates, can keep going up bit by bit. And unfortunately, the average Aussie mortgage holder just has to tighten their belt and, adjust, because the other drivers are still keeping prices buoyant, unfortunately.
Yeah, they are. And the incremental cumulative increases at this stage are having very little effect, I would think. It's certainly in the broader market, because for instance, there's no evidence of defaults, there's actually no evidence of mortgage stress in the banking results. That doesn't mean there isn't mortgage stress, but there isn't mortgage stress in the sense of people not paying their mortgages, because they will keep paying them at almost any rate. And I mean any rate, double what we have now. There was a period when was it? The famous Paul Keating period where interest rates were 15, 16%. Yes. Mortgage rates were...
even 18%.
I know.
I think it nearly touched 20% as well.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? But
these are it's the stakes that Aussies will go to keep a roof over their head. And I think that's the thing most people forget, that people are not going to just put a property on the market and sell the roof over their head when times get tough. A lot of folks will go to their lender and they'll try and refinance. They'll try and go interest only. They'll try and reduce their repayments. They will do everything in their power. They'll even get side gigs. They'll do things like, have a second or third job or passive income stream. So folks will do everything in their power to hold their primary residence.
Yeah.
They won't just immediately default and there be like a mortgagee repossession sale.
Yes, yeah. And I often hear people waiting for that. And I say, well, I wouldn't be waiting for that, which I think is really what you're implying there. Okay, you might like this last question. It's from Nathan. And Nathan asks, I suspect this is a common scenario. I don't know if it is, by the way. And this is not advice, it's information only. But Nathan says, I've got a mortgage on a home, primary residence, and tech shares worth more than the mortgage. He's got some pretty good tech shares there. And he's on a good income and a desire to keep going. What should we do in this scenario? That sounds like a very broad brush question for a financial advisor. But if you were a buyer's advocate operating in Sydney, you might have a different answer.
It's a tough one. I don't want to overstep my as a buyer's advocate, but I would probably say that if you have a reasonable mortgage at the moment, I would try and pay down some of that mortgage.
Yeah.
I think the volatility at present, I think we've all noticed the volatility at present in the stock market is substantially greater than the property market. I would aim to get further equity in that property by paying it down somewhat. However, there's nothing to be said for a diversified portfolio. So I would definitely, especially at a time like this, hold stocks, diversify your portfolio there. But with the way we have the global economy tracking at the moment, and especially with what is going on in Israel at the moment, I think it is very much the case that holding your funds in property is a lot less of a volatile move at the moment.
Yeah, certainly a lot easier to sleep at night, because you don't see any volatility until you go to sell. So, and there are times where that's a pretty nice, reassuring place to be. Okay, look, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kitty. Great to talk to you again. Nice to have you on our call, on our new setup here. And folks, do keep the questions coming. Remember the email, themoneypuzzle@theaustralian.com.au. That was Kitty Parker. Thank you, Kitty.
Thanks for having me, James, and thanks to all your listeners.
No, you're very welcome. Lovely to have you on again. Okay, folks, talk to you soon.